Hello and welcome to another video from War Secrets. When you think about the aerial warfare of the Second World War, which planes come to mind? Spitfires and Mustangs and B-17s, right? While these wonderful planes stole the headlines in the war, they were far too high maintenance to win the war on their own. That honor goes to the workhorses, the inexpensive, humble fighters like the one on today's list. The Curtiss P-40 was a workhorse that saw action in practically every theater of World War II. It has been appreciated and criticized, but the reality is that it bore the brunt of air warfare on several battlefronts. So without further ado, let's dive into all the details about it. The origins of the P-40 may be traced all the way back to 1924. When the renowned Curtiss Hawk fighters were the best all-around US pursuit aircraft. After losing to the Boeing P-26 in a US AAC fly-off in 1933, Curtiss was desperate to keep its position as an Army Air Corps contractor and appointed Donovan R. Berlin as the company's new head engineer. Berlin had previously worked for companies like Douglas and Northrop, both of which were at the forefront of aircraft design. The Model 75 was born as a result. The Model 75 was first passed over in favor of the Seversky P-35, but Curtiss was awarded a contract for 210 Model 75s, designated P-36As in 1937, which was the largest US military aviation order since World War I. The XP-37 was built using the Model 75 airframe and an Allison V171011 engine with a General Electric turbo supercharger. 13 YP-37s were ordered for testing, but the supercharger proved problematic and was on the verge of catching fire. Due to dependability concerns with supercharging, the XP-40 Curtiss Hawk Model 81 was eventually chosen. It employed a 1,160 horsepower Allison V171019 engine with a mechanical supercharger. Despite the fact that an inline engine had superior streamlining, more power per unit of frontal area, and better specific fuel consumption than equivalent air-cooled radials, the Allison engine's rated altitude was only about 12,000 feet, making combat over 15,000 feet impossible. Given the limitations of technology at the time and an antiquated chase aircraft strategy, the P-40's accomplishments are all the more impressive. The National Defense Act of 1939 provided for 5,000 planes for the Air Corps, but President Franklin D. Roosevelt increased the total number of planes to 50,000 in May 1940, which was considered an absurdly optimistic number at the time. Due to the lack of a reliable supercharger, the P-40, it was built on a medium-altitude fighter, resulting in less than desirable performance. When compared to the Mitsubishi Zero and Messerschmitt Bf 109, it was effectively outclassed as soon as it left the factory. However, it was widely available, and its flaws were partially offset by its docile flight characteristics and sturdiness, which allowed it to withstand a great deal of wear and tear. During the US Army Air Corps pursuit competition on January 25, 1939, it was chosen above the Lockheed XP-38 and Bell XP-39 because it was easily accessible for mass production. Cost was a major consideration in that decision. The P-40 was around $53,000, and P-39 was around $71,000, and the P-38 was around $126,000. The United States was not expected to face a high-altitude attack in the early 1930s. In 1931, the performance of bombers and chase planes were nearly equal, and the Boeing B-9 bomber was faster than any other bomber in the globe. The US AAC plan, which stressed coastal defense and ground attack, was becoming out of date, and the Bell P-39 Airacobra and P-40 were envisioned as low-altitude aircraft for ground support operations. As the winds of war blew in May 1939, the Army placed an order for 524 production P-40s, the largest ever production order for a US fighter at the time, totaling about $13 million. As a result, the P-39 and P-40 accounted for more than half of all US AAF fighters sent overseas during World War II's early stages. However, only one P-40 group remained operational in July 1945. While superior fighter deliveries increased by July 1943. During the early years of the war, P-40s accounted for a large portion of aircraft orders, with both Britain and France ordering P-40s to combat the German Luftwaffe. However, deliveries to France were delayed, and their P-40s were diverted to the Royal Air Force, where they became known as Tomahawks. Similarly, the Soviet Union's out-of-date force had suffered heavy losses at the hands of the Germans, prompting the deployment of P-40s. With 13,738 aircrafts completed, the P-40 became the third most produced American fighter during World War II after the P-51 and P-47. The P-40 had a relatively simple design, with a completely retractable tailwheel that was rare for the time. However, in 1941, a British-built Rolls-Royce Merlin 28 engine with a single-stage 2-speed supercharger was placed in a Kitty Hawk 1 airframe to boost its high-altitude performance. The Curtiss H-87D, or XP-40F, as the Merlin-powered prototype was dubbed at the time, had 1,300 horsepower for takeoff and 1,120 horsepower at 18,500 feet, providing significant improvements over prior versions and a top speed of 373 miles per hour. The YP-40F, like later variations, had the Packard-built Merlin 5 1650-1 and redesigned cooling, with the air intake above the cowling incorporated into the radiator scoop. The total weight increased to 9,870 pounds. The P-40D, model H-87A2, was the first major design revision. It was powered by a 1,150 horsepower Allison V171039 engine with an external reduction gear, which raised the thrust line and cut the overall length by 6 inches. The landing gear was shortened and the fuselage's cross-section was decreased. The radiator was enlarged and shifted forwards slightly. 4 50 caliber machine guns were installed in the wings in place of the nose guns. There was room for a 500-pound bomb or an external centerline fuel tank. The gross weight was increased to 8,670 pounds, and the top speed was reported to be 360 miles per hour. However, the rate of ascent and ceiling remained low. Before the United States entered the war, many US volunteer pilots flew for the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and China. A group of P-40s, dubbed the Flying Tigers because of their distinctively painted planes, aided the Chinese in their fight against the Japanese in 1942. This unit later became part of the USAAF, and P-40s were widely utilized in the Pacific after that. General Claire Chennault began recruiting for his volunteer group, better known as the Flying Tigers, in the middle of 1941, and 100 P-40s were ordered through a loan from the US government to battle the Japanese from China. 90 planes, principally P-40Bs, were sent in total, enough for 3 squadrons plus spares. The volunteer group had 80 American pilots, and the United States entered the war. And soon after arriving in Kunming, the P-40s tasted first blood, the 2 of the AVG squadrons destroying 6 out of 10 attacking Japanese bombers on December 20th. On this occasion, there were no American losses, but the 3rd Squadron, which had been left behind in Mingaladon, Burma, was not so fortunate, losing 2 pilots on their first interception on December 23, 1941. The American pilots had overestimated the Mitsubishi Zero fighter's maneuverability and failed to take advantage of their superior speed and diving abilities. Because of the Curtiss machine's inferior climb rate and maneuverability, it became a cardinal rule that a P-40 should never be mixed with a Japanese fighter. However, the P-40 solidified a reputation for toughness that it had already earned with the RAF in the Middle East, and its armor protection saved many AVG pilots in subsequent combat. P-40Bs were replaced by P-40Es by both the Flying Tigers in China and RAF squadrons in the Middle East. After years of continuous service, the AVG was down to about 20 P-40Bs by March 1942, when 30 P-40Es were airlifted from Accra, Ghana to China. Against Zeros, which were introduced in the Chinese theater in 1940, the better performance afforded by these more powerful P-40s was found to be particularly valuable. The P-40E's ground attack capability was likewise far superior. The AVG pilots had resorted to carrying 30-pound incendiary and fragmentation bombs in their P-40B flare chutes. But it is debatable if this was not riskier for the attackers than for the attacked. The fact that the AVG was officially credited with the destruction of 286 Japanese aircraft from its inception in December 1941 until July 4, 1942, when it was absorbed by the USAAF, gives some indication of the P-40's capabilities in resolute hands. The AVG was officially credited with the loss of 8 pilots killed in action, 2 pilots and 1 crew chief killed during ground attack, and 4 pilots missing. While flying the P-40, the top-scoring AVG pilot, Robert H. Neal, was credited with destroying 16 enemy aircraft, while 8 other pilots claimed 10 or more kills. This brings today's video to an end. We hope you liked it. If so, don't forget to subscribe to War Secrets and press the bell icon to receive the latest notifications from our channel. See you in the next video. Take care.